Okay, so let's get into WandaVision. This is going to be my breakdown of episode 1 through 5. Now, in the first episode, you kind of get a glimpse of their world, them entering this new town and this new dimension or pocket reality, whatever you want to call it. And everything seems to be kind of off, but it kind of seems normal just a bit, but most of it seems off. Now, little things tend to happen, like the boss's dinner. They don't know whether they're married or not. This leads into the confusion of what may be going on.
At this point, it's clear that something else is at play other than just Wanda and her powers and, the things that they're getting into. Now, as episode 1 and 2 kind of ends, we start to feel like things are changing. So she pretty much changes the world based on if something goes wrong. So when the beekeeper comes up out of the sewer, automatically those alarms get rung and she says no. And when she says no at the end of episode 2, she automatically back in the living room, her and Vision, and she's automatically pregnant out of that scene. So as she's pregnant and this her belly begins to grow, the next thing that happens, everything around her and Vision is colorized. So that's episode going into episode 3. So once you get to episode 3, it gets even weirder because her pregnancy is just like sped up at an alarming rate. So at that point, I'm like, okay, she's clearly manipulating everything or somewhat everything. So at this point, by the end of the episode, she's had the babies and there's twins. It's not one baby anymore, it's two. And then Geraldine asks the question, hey, you had a twin, right? Pietro killed by Ultron. Wanda's alarms rang. Her personality does a switch like a flip. And she decides to kick Monica out of the world. Well, Geraldine, Monica, however you want to say it. She's kicked out of the world at that point. So once she's kicked out of the world, everything is like bonkers. It's blown wide open at this point. She's Monica's on the ground like, okay, it's all Wanda. It's all Wanda. And for me, I just stopped and was like, okay, this has House of M-esque written all over it. So for me, I began to judge it on that manner, and the episode 3 just uh, going into episode 4 just is one of these things where it calls back to the end game scenario where everybody's coming back into existence. Now, the funny part about her coming back into existence, she's literally fading back in instead of doing what they did in Spider-Man, which is like just pop up randomly. So it shows the particles slowly coming back in. As she comes back in, she realizes, hey, my mom's now dead. She wasn't dead before I left. What's going on? Monica's confused herself. So throughout the episode, it is explaining Monica dealing with her grief in this episode too, which is why Wanda let her into the world in the first place, I believe. And grief is a unifying tool. So by grief being a unifying tool, that's what allows them to bond on some type of level. So as episode 4 progresses, you find out that the perspective that Sword and everyone else from outside of it, the bubble has, what the FBI agent feels, how Darcy feels, how the director feels, their perspectives watching this whole thing unfold, because they're confused and they're looking from the lens that we're looking from as the viewer. So Geraldine at this point is like blown out of the world and everything is going on. So when we pick up in episode 5, that's when you start to see more of both worlds. You see the inside of the bubble and outside of the bubble reality. So this inside outside of the bubble reality type of this type of perspective that shows everything, it kind of leads you down a bunch of different theories and rabbit holes. But the craziest part of this episode, it seems like Wanda has more than one mindset. Like she has multiple personality, but the kids are aging themselves in this episode as well because they're going through grief, and it shows how she's trying to teach her kids how to properly deal with trauma. But on the other spectrum, it still feels like someone else is at work other than Wanda's own doing. And this is where I start to believe that there could be a nightmare, Mephisto, or someone involved. So Vision is, at the same time, Vision is trying to piece all of this together, and he's realizing, hey, something isn't right. I'm now understanding that Wanda is lying to me. So by the end of the episode, they get into it. They get into a shouting match. And as they get into the shouting match, you know, Wanda's like, I don't know, even know how all this started. And I'm like, there it is. And then while they're arguing, mid-argument, there's a doorbell and it's Quicksilver. It's Quicksilver, and that's the end of the episode. So, yeah.